A very long time ago, in the peaceful village of Umueke, life was simple and quiet. The people of the village believed in the magic of the river Umudike, which flowed nearby. They said the river could protect secrets and change destinies. The villagers always treated the river with care and respect, knowing its power. In the grand kingdom of Umuake, Queen Amaka gave birth to her first child. But her joy turned to fear when she saw her baby for the first time. His skin had unusual patches, some dark, some white, like the patterns of vitiligo. The midwives stared in silence, unsure of what to say. They were unfamiliar with this as they had never experienced such in their time. Queen Amaka's heart broke as she looked at her son. She loved him, but she also knew King Azeudo, her husband, would never accept him. The king was a proud and unforgiving man who wanted a son to reflect his power and strength. If he saw the baby, he would not understand. Worse, he might harm the child, believing him to be cursed and a bringer of bad luck. The king was away on a royal journey when the baby was born. With him gone, Queen Amaka had time to think. She begged the midwives to swear they would never speak of what had happened. "Please," she said through her tears, "no one must know about this child. Promise me." The midwives, moved by the queen's pain, agreed. To the kingdom they announced that the queen had lost her child at birth. The news spread quickly and people mourned for the royal family. But inside the palace, Queen Amaka carried a heavy secret. That night, Queen Amaka wrapped her baby in a soft cloth and left the palace. The hallways were quiet, and only the sound of her footsteps echoed as she made her way to the stable. She took a horse and rode under the cover of darkness toward the village of Umueke near the river Umudaike. When she reached the riverbank, the queen stepped off her horse and knelt by the water. She held her baby close, her tears falling onto his face. "My son," she whispered, her voice breaking, "I love you, but the world will not accept you. I am doing this to protect you." The river flowed gently, its surface shimmering in the moonlight. Queen Amaka placed the baby in the water, and the current cradled him as it carried him downstream. She watched until she could no longer see him, her heart heavy with pain and regret. Slowly, she got back on her horse and rode back to the palace, leaving the child in the hands of fate. The villagers of Umweke often heard stories about the river's magic, but none of them knew what had happened that night. They continued to live their lives, unaware that the river now carried a secret that would change everything. Deep beneath the waters of the river Umudike, in the hidden underwater kingdom of Mmanwu, Queen Ifunanya felt the river's energy stir. She had ruled Mmanwu for many years, guiding her people with wisdom and kindness. But that night, something unusual drew her attention. The queen swam gracefully toward the surface, the water parting around her like a whisper. As she emerged, the moonlight illuminated a small bundle floating gently on the river. The soft cries of a baby reached her ears, pulling at her heart. "What is this?" she murmured, lifting the baby into her arms. She was stunned by what she saw. The baby's skin had beautiful patches, dark and white, like a work of art painted by the gods. Queen Ifunanya smiled softly. "You are special," she said, cradling him close. "The river has brought you to me for a reason." The queen looked around, but there was no one in sight. She knew the river never gave its secrets easily. If this child had been sent to her, it was her duty to protect him. "You are no ordinary child," she whispered. "I will name you Chima, for you are a gift to us all." Queen Ifunanya carried the baby back to Mmanwu, her kingdom beneath the waters. The underwater city sparkled with life. Colorful coral palaces, glowing plants, and creatures of all shapes and sizes. When she entered her grand hall with the baby, her people gathered around, curious and amazed. "Who is this child?" one of her advisors asked. "The river has blessed us with him," Queen Ifunanya replied firmly. "He is now Prince Chima, and I will raise him as my own." Her voice left no room for argument. She used her magic to help him breathe underwater and live comfortably among them, The people of Manu accepted the child, though they marveled at his unique appearance. Meanwhile, back in the kingdom of Umuake, King Ezeudo returned to the palace after a month-long journey. He was greeted by his servants and advisors, but he noticed immediately that something was wrong. The usually cheerful palace felt heavy with sadness. "Where is Queen Amaka?" he asked, his voice sharp. The servants exchanged uneasy glances before one of them spoke. "Your Majesty, the Queen is in her chambers. She has been mourning the loss of your son." The words hit King Ezeudo like a blow. "My son? What do you mean?" A trusted advisor stepped forward, bowing deeply. "Your Majesty, the Queen gave birth while you were away. The child did not survive." The king's chest tightened with grief. He hurried to Queen Amaka's chambers, where he found her sitting by the window, her face pale and her eyes swollen from crying. She looked up at him and tried to hold back her tears, but they came anyway. "My king," she whispered, her voice trembling, "I am so sorry. Our son, he is gone." King Ezeudo sat beside her, his face filled with sorrow. "Why did this happen?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Why was I not here to bury my own son?" Queen Amaka bowed her head, guilt clawing at her heart. It all happened so quickly. The midwives did all they could. We buried him near the palace garden, where he will rest in peace. The king clenched his fists. His grief was overwhelming, but his anger simmered just beneath the surface. He felt powerless, and that made him furious. "I should have been here," he muttered. "A man should never leave his family in times of need." Queen Amaka placed her hand on his arm, her own fear growing. She knew her secret could never be revealed. If the king discovered what she had done, his wrath would be unimaginable. "My king," she said softly, "I share your pain. I pray every day for another chance, a chance to give you another son." King Ezeudo looked at her, his expression a mix of grief and frustration. "We must have another child," he said firmly. "We must." Queen Amaka nodded, hiding her trembling hands. "Yes, my king. I promise we will try." But in her heart, she carried the weight of her secret, vowing to keep it hidden until the end. Every time she saw the king's sorrow, her guilt deepened, but she clung to the hope that another child would heal their broken hearts. Beneath the sparkling waters of Umudaike, the underwater kingdom of Mamanwu was alive with color and life. Coral palaces gleamed in shades of pink and gold. Schools of fish darted through glowing kelp forests, and the mermaids sang songs that echoed in the peaceful waters. At the heart of this magical world was Queen Ifunanya, who now had a new light in her life, Prince Chima. Chima was growing quickly, and he was unlike anyone in Mamanwu. His skin, with its unique blend of dark and light patches, fascinated everyone. His face was handsome, with kind eyes that seemed to sparkle like the river itself. Chima's cheerful nature and curious spirit made him loved by all the mermaids, who saw him as a gift from the river gods. "He is special," Queen Ifunanya often said with pride. "The river brought him to us for a reason." Chima grew up exploring the wonders of Mamanwu. He swam faster than most mermaids his age and showed incredible bravery. He loved learning about the underwater world and was always eager to help those around him. The mermaids adored him and often told stories of how he would one day lead them with wisdom and strength. Yet, even as he thrived, questions lingered in the minds of some. "Where did he come from?" they whispered. "Why is he so different?" But no one dared to question Queen Ifunanya's belief that Chima was a divine gift. Far above the waters of Umudike, in the grand kingdom of Umuake, Queen Amaka was living a very different life. She wore a mask of composure, but inside guilt consumed her. Every time she saw King Ezeudo, her heart raced with fear. She worried that one day he would discover the truth about what she had done. The king, still grieving the loss of his son, grew restless. "Why have the gods taken my child?" he would often ask. His sorrow turned into frustration, and he became determined to have another heir. But as months passed, then years passed, Queen Amaka was unable to conceive again. "Why has this curse fallen upon me?" the king demanded one evening, his voice sharp with anger. Queen Amaka, trembling inside, tried to soothe him. "The gods will bless us again, my king," she said softly, though her own heart doubted her words. King Aziudo, impatient and proud, decided to take another wife. The palace buzzed with activity as he married a young noblewoman named Uju, hoping she would give him the heir he longed for. But as time went by, Queen Uju also failed to conceive. The king's frustration grew, and his anger became harder to contain. The palace was tense, with everyone fearful of his wrath. In the village of Umueke, near the river Umudike, life was simpler but filled with its own joys and struggles. Among the villagers was a beautiful young girl named Chika. Chika was known for her kind heart and gentle nature. She was always ready to help others, whether it was carrying water for an elder or comforting a crying child. The villagers loved her and often spoke of her as a blessing to the community. "She has a heart of gold," said Mama Ozioma, the village storyteller. "Chika's kindness brings light to everyone around her." But not everyone admired Chika. Two girls in the village, Nkem and Amara, were jealous of her. They couldn't stand how everyone praised her and looked up to her. The two of them often whispered among themselves, their jealousy growing into bitterness. "She thinks she's better than us because she is so beautiful," Nkem would say, crossing her arms. "We'll show her she's not so special," Amara would conclude, her eyes narrowing. Chika was oblivious to their envy and treated them as friends. Chika never stopped being kind to them. She greeted them with warmth and tried to include them in everything she did. But their hearts remained cold, and they began to plan a way to humiliate her. The annual Umweke festival was approaching, a time of music, dance, and celebration. The whole village was excited, preparing colorful decorations and cooking delicious meals. Chika was especially excited, as the festival was her favorite time of year. She loved seeing the smiles on everyone's faces and hearing the joyful songs. Nkem and Amara saw the festival as their chance. "We'll make her regret being everyone's favorite," Nkem whispered. The plan was set, and Chika, unaware of their intentions, looked forward to the festival with her usual bright smile. The annual Umweke festival was in full swing. Children ran around laughing, and the smell of roasted yam and fresh palm wine filled the air. Chika moved gracefully through the crowd, her cheerful smile making everyone she passed feel lighter. She loved the festival more than anything and couldn't wait to join the dancing. Amara and Nkem watched from a distance, their jealousy burning hotter with every person who greeted Chika warmly. "She thinks she's the star of the festival," Nkem muttered, her eyes narrowing. "We'll show her," Amara replied, her lips curling into a cruel smile. As the festival reached its peak, the two girls approached Chika with friendly smiles. "Chika, come with us," Amara said sweetly. "There's a special surprise we want to show you by the river." Chika, ever trusting and kind, followed them without hesitation. "A surprise? That sounds wonderful," she said, her voice full of excitement. The three girls walked away from the lively square toward the quiet banks of the river Umudike. The moon shone brightly on the water, making it shimmer like silver. Chika turned to her friends, her smile as bright as ever. "So, where's the surprise?" Amara and Nkem exchanged a quick glance before stepping closer to her. "It's right here," Nkem said coldly. Before Chika could react, the two girls pushed her with all their strength. She stumbled backward, her arms flailing as she fell into the river. The icy water swallowed her screams, and she disappeared beneath the surface. Amara and Nkem stood at the edge, staring at the rippling water. "Let's go before anyone sees us," Amara whispered. They ran back to the festival, leaving the river to claim Chika's life. In the depths of the river, Chima was exploring the coral reefs near his home. He loved swimming at night, when the moonlight filtered through the water and made everything glow softly. As he darted through the currents, something caught his attention, a faint, muffled sound. He stopped and listened closely. It was the sound of someone struggling in the water. Curious and alarmed, Chima swam toward the source of the noise. He spotted a figure sinking slowly, her arms and legs barely moving. Without thinking, he
He rushed to her side and wrapped his arms around her, pulling her upward with all his strength. Breaking through the surface, Chima gasped for air and looked at the girl in his arms. She coughed and sputtered, her eyes fluttering open. Chima stared at her, captivated by her beauty and the kindness in her frightened eyes. "Are you okay?" he asked softly. Chika nodded weakly, her voice barely a whisper. "Who are you?" "I'm Chima," he replied, his voice calm and steady. "You were drowning. What happened?" Chika looked around, realizing where she was. She began, but stopped. She couldn't bring herself to speak of Amara and Ninkem's betrayal of someone she just met. "I fell," she said instead. "Thank you for saving me." Chima tilted his head, studying her. "You're not supposed to be in the water," he said, his tone curious. "You don't belong here." Chika stared at him in disbelief. "And you do?" she asked. "You're human, like me, and your skin is beautiful. You don't belong here either." Chima frowned, the words striking something deep within him. "This is my home," he said firmly. "I've always lived in the water." Chika looked at him closely, noticing his unique appearance. "You're different," she said softly. "I can see it. Maybe you're meant for something greater." Chima felt a strange unease but quickly shook it off. "What's your name?" he asked. "Chika," she replied with a faint smile. Chima helped her to the shore where she sat shivering. "Thank you again," she said. "I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to repay me," Chima said. "Just be careful." As he turned to leave, Chika reached out and grabbed his hand. "Wait," she said. "Will I see you again?" Chima hesitated, then nodded. "If you come to the river, I'll be here." Chika smiled, her heart lighter despite what had happened. "Then I'll come back. I promise." As Chima disappeared into the water, Chika sat quietly by the river, her thoughts swirling. She had found an unlikely friend, but something about him felt mysterious and unfinished. Deep in the waters of Umudike, Chima returned home, but Chika's words echoed in his mind. "You're human, like me." The idea unsettled him. Was he really so different from the others in Mamanwu? As he swam through the glowing halls of his underwater home, he noticed the looks the other mermaids gave him, the curious stares, the whispers. For the first time, he wondered about the life he had always known. "Who am I?" he whispered to himself, his heart heavy with questions he couldn't yet answer. The days that followed the festival were difficult for Chika. She returned to the village drenched and shaken, her heart heavy with betrayal. Amara and Ninkem were shocked to see her alive and well. Their faces turned pale when they saw her walking back through the village square. "She survived?" Amara whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "How?" Ninkem muttered, her eyes wide. "No one comes back from Umudaika once they fall in." The two girls exchanged nervous glances but quickly masked their fear with forced smiles, pretending nothing had happened. Chika, however, now saw them for who they truly were. Their betrayal had opened her eyes, and she decided she would never trust them again. Despite her anger and hurt, Chika's kind heart would not allow her to expose their actions. She knew that if the elders or the king discovered the truth, Amara and Nkem would be severely punished, perhaps even banished from the village. Chika couldn't bear to see that happen, even to them. Instead, she decided to confront them quietly. One afternoon, she found them near the market. "Amara, Nkem," she called, her voice calm but firm. The two girls turned, their expressions guarded. "Chika," Nkem said nervously. "We're glad you're safe." Chika looked at them, her gaze steady. "I know what you did," she said softly. "You pushed me into the river. You wanted to hurt me, maybe even kill me." Amara and Nkem's faces turned red with shame, but they said nothing. "I don't hate you," Chika continued. "I don't want to see you punished, but you must change your ways. Jealousy and hatred will only destroy you." Amara crossed her arms, refusing to meet Chika's eyes. "We don't need your lectures," she said coldly. Nkem hesitated, guilt flickering in her eyes, but she stayed silent. Seeing their stubbornness, Chika sighed. "Fine," she said. "I won't tell anyone, but I won't trust you again. I'll stay away from you. I hope one day you'll realize your mistakes." With that, she walked away, leaving the two girls behind. From that day on, Chika focused on the things that brought her joy, her family, her kindness, and most of all, her new friendship with Chima. Chika visited the river often, and every time she did, Chima was there. He would emerge from the water with a wide smile, his eyes lighting up at the sight of her. The two of them would sit by the riverbank, sharing stories of their lives. Chika told him about her village, the festival, and her love for helping others. She didn't speak of Amara and Nkem's betrayal, choosing instead to focus on the good things in her life. Chima, in turn, shared stories about the underwater kingdom of Mmanwu, the glowing coral palaces, the schools of colorful fish, and the songs the mermaids sang. Chika was enchanted by his tales, and she loved hearing about his world. "Teach me one of your songs," Chika said one day, her eyes bright with curiosity. Chima laughed, his voice warm and cheerful. "All right," he said. He began to sing a soft, lilting tune, the words flowing like the river itself. Chika listened closely, memorizing the melody and the lyrics. When she tried singing it back to him, her voice was sweet and pure, and Chima's smile grew wider. "You have a beautiful voice," he said. "Sing that whenever you come to the river. It will let me know you're here." Chika promised she would, and from then on, the song became their secret signal. Whenever Chika approached the river, she would sing the special tune, and Chima would rise from the water, ready to greet her. As their friendship deepened, Chima began to notice things about himself that didn't quite fit with the underwater world he called home. He was faster and stronger than most of the mermaids, but he couldn't breathe underwater for as long as they could. His appearance, too, was different. His skin, with its unique patches of dark and light, stood out among the mermaids' smooth, even-toned complexions. "Why am I different?" he wondered aloud one evening as he swam back to Manwu. His thoughts grew heavier, and finally he decided to ask Queen Ifunanya, the only mother he had ever known. He found her in the grand hall of their coral palace, seated on a throne made of shimmering shells. "Mother," Chima began hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" Queen Ifunanya looked at him with a kind smile. "Of course, my son. What troubles you?" Chima hesitated, then said, "Why am I different from the others? Why does my skin look like this? Why do I feel like I don't belong?" The queen's smile faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. "You are special, Chima," she said. "The river brought you to me. It chose you to be my son. Your differences are what make you unique and strong." "But where did I come from?" Chima pressed. "Was I born here?" Queen Ifunanya's gaze softened, but there was a flicker of something in her eyes. Uncertainty, or perhaps fear. "You are a gift, Chima," she said firmly. "The river gave you to me, and that is all that matters." Chima nodded, but her words didn't fully satisfy him. Deep down he felt there was more to his story, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the river held secrets he had yet to uncover. Chika's days were brighter than ever. Despite the betrayal she had endured, her secret meetings with Chima at the river brought her happiness like she had never known. Chima had become her closest friend, someone she could share her thoughts and dreams with. In return, Chima found solace in Chika's kindness and laughter. The two of them would meet by the river nearly every evening. Chika always began with the special song Chima had taught her, and he would rise from the water, his smile lighting up her heart. Together they would sit by the riverbank, talking about everything, her life in the village and his life beneath the river. In the village, Amara and Nkem couldn't help but notice how happy Chika seemed. They had expected her to be broken after the festival, but instead she glowed with a joy that made their jealousy burn brighter. What could she possibly be so happy about? Nkem hissed one afternoon as they watched Chika humming to herself while fetching water. "She's hiding something," Amara replied, "and I'm going to find out what it is." The two girls decided to follow Chika. They kept their distance, watching her closely over the next few days. Finally, one evening they saw her slipping away toward the river. They trailed her quietly, staying hidden among the trees. When Chika reached the riverbank, she began singing the special song. Amara and Nkem froze, their curiosity growing. A moment later they saw a figure rising from the water. It was Chima, his striking appearance and confident presence leaving them stunned. "Who is he?" Nkem whispered. "I don't know," Amara replied, her voice filled with suspicion. "But we need to find out." As Chika and Chima talked and laughed by the river, Amara and Nkem crept closer, careful not to be seen. They listened intently, trying to piece together the nature of Chika's mysterious friendship. When they couldn't learn anything concrete, they decided to leave quietly, plotting to use what they had seen to their advantage later. 15 years passed, and much had changed. Chima had grown into a strikingly handsome young man. His once boyish charm had matured into confidence and grace, and his unique appearance made him all the more captivating. His bond with Chika had only grown stronger over the years. They continued to meet by the river, sharing their thoughts and dreams. For Chima, those meetings had become the most important part of his life. He had fallen deeply in love with Chika, but he kept his feelings hidden, afraid she might not feel the same way. Whenever she smiled at him or sang the song they shared, his heart swelled with emotions he couldn't put into words. Back in the kingdom of Umuake, King Aziudo was a shadow of the man he had once been. Over the years he had taken many wives, desperate to have an heir, but no matter how many times he tried, none of his queens bore him a child. His once proud demeanor was now clouded with frustration and despair. "The gods are punishing me," he often muttered to himself. "What have I done to deserve this?" Queen Amaka, now aging but still carrying the weight of her secret, watched her husband's torment with a mixture of guilt and sorrow. She often prayed silently, hoping the truth would never come to light. But as the years dragged on, her prayers felt more like a fragile shield against the storm she feared was coming. Finally, King Azudo decided he could no longer bear the burden alone. He summoned the most powerful chief priest in the land, a man known for his wisdom and connection to the gods. The priest arrived at the palace, his presence commanding respect and awe. "My king," the priest said, bowing deeply, "how may I serve you?" King Azudo's voice was heavy with desperation. "I have no heir," he said. "For years I have prayed and sacrificed, but the gods remain silent. I need answers. Why have the gods cursed me so?" The priest closed his eyes and began to chant, calling upon the spirits for guidance. The air in the room grew heavy and a strange energy seemed to fill the space. After a long silence, the priest opened his eyes and spoke. "My king," he said, his voice steady but filled with gravity. "There is a secret in your past, one that binds your fate. The gods have not cursed you, in fact, they blessed you with a special child. They are waiting for you to uncover the truth." King Azudo leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "What secret? What truth?" The priest hesitated as if choosing his words carefully. "It is tied to your son," he said, "the one you believe was lost. Ask your queen, my king. The answers lie with her." The weight of the chief priest's words hung heavily in King Azudo's mind. His son, the child he had mourned for years, might still be alive. The thought ignited a mixture of anger, hope, and betrayal within him. Determined to uncover the truth, he stormed into Queen Amaka's chambers that evening, his face dark with fury. Queen Amaka looked up from her seat, her heart sinking at the sight of her husband's expression. She had always feared this moment. "Amaka," the king said, his voice low but trembling with anger. "The chief priest spoke of a secret about our son. Tell me the truth, what happened the night he was born?" The queen's hands shook as she clutched the edge of her chair. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Speak," the king roared, slamming his fist onto the table. Tears filled Queen Amaka's eyes as she finally confessed. "My king, she began, her voice breaking. "Our son, his skin was different. It had patches, dark and white. I was terrified. I feared you would see him as imperfect, as a shame to your legacy. I was weak, my king. I placed him in the river Umudike, hoping the gods would take him." King Azudo staggered backward as if her words had struck him physically, his face twisted with rage and disbelief. "You discarded our son!" he spat. "You threw him away like he was nothing! He was a gift from the gods!" "I was scared," Queen Amaka cried, falling to her knees. "I thought I was protecting him. I didn't know what else to do." Before the king could respond, the chief priest entered the chamber, his presence calm yet commanding. "My king," he said, raising his hand, "do not act in anger." "She betrayed me! She betrayed our son!" King Azudo bellowed, pointing at the queen. The priest's voice remained steady. "The gods are angry, yes. The child was blessed and sent to bring greatness to your kingdom. But because he was discarded carelessly, the gods withheld their blessings from you. That is why you have had no other children." The king's breathing was heavy, his fists clenched. "And what of this child now?" he demanded. "Is he alive?" The chief priest nodded slowly. "I believe he is, my king. The river does not take life without purpose. Your son was meant for great things, and his fate is tied to yours." The king turned to Queen Amaka, his anger still blazing. "You have brought shame upon this family," he growled. "But for the sake of our son, and at the priest's plea, I will spare your life." Queen Amaka bowed her head, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you, my king," she whispered. "I pray you will find him." Determined to find his son, King Azeudo began his search in the village of Umueke, the closest settlement to the river Umudaika. He arrived with his guards, asking villagers if anyone had found or adopted a child with blemished skin many years ago. The villagers were curious but shook their heads, claiming they knew nothing of such a child. Despite the lack of answers, the king was relentless. "He must be here," he muttered to himself. "He must have survived." Word of the king's search spread quickly through the village. Meanwhile, in the underwater kingdom of Manwu, Chima felt a growing unease. For years he had been content with his life in the water, but now, something deep inside him felt restless. He began to question his place in the world. Chima found comfort in his meetings with Chika, who was now his closest friend. She was the only person he could truly open up to. But even with her, he couldn't bring himself to share the full extent of his doubts. On one of their usual evenings by the river, Chika noticed his troubled expression. "Chima," she said gently, "is something bothering you?" Chima hesitated, then nodded. "I feel strange," he admitted. "Like I'm meant for something else, but I don't know what." Chika placed a comforting hand on his shoulder. "You are special, Chima. I've always known that. Maybe your heart is trying to tell you something." Chima looked at her, his feelings for her bubbling to the surface. But he held them back, afraid of what she might say. He kissed her forehead gently. Amara and Nkem, who had harbored jealousy toward Chika for years, listened closely to the rumors of the king's search. When they overheard that the king was looking for a man with blemished skin, a memory clicked into place. "It must be him," Amara whispered, her eyes wide. "The one Chika meets at the river." The two girls wasted no time. They approached the king's guards and requested to speak with him. When they were granted an audience, they knelt before the king, their voices low and urgent. "My king," Amara began, her tone filled with false sincerity, "we have seen someone who fits your description." The king's eyes narrowed. "Explain." "For years," Nkem continued, "we've seen a strange man emerging from the river Umudaike. He has unusual skin, dark and white patches. We believe he might be the one you're searching for." King Ezeudo's heart leapt at their words. "This man," he said, leaning forward, "where does he live?" Amara hesitated. "We don't know, my king," she said, "but we've watched him meet with a girl from our village, Chika. She sings a song, and he comes to the surface." Nkem nodded quickly. If you summon him the same way, he will appear. The king's mind raced. Could it really be his son, alive after all these years? You have done well to tell me this, he said, his voice firm. If what you say is true, I will reward you. Guards, prepare to leave for the river. As the king prepared for his journey to the river, he reflected on the pain and loss that had defined his life since the day he thought his son had died. The anger he felt toward Queen Amaka still burned within him, but his focus was now on finding the child she had cast away. If this is truly my son, he thought, I will bring him back, no matter the cost. The chief priest, who accompanied the king, remained silent but observant. He sensed that the unfolding events were guided by the gods, and that the child's fate would shape the future of the kingdom. The king and his guards arrived at the riverbank with Amara and Nkem in tow. They stayed hidden among the trees. King Ezeudo stood by the river Umudike. His heart raced as he replayed the words of Amara and Nkem, the strange man with blemished skin who emerged from the river. Could it truly be his son? The child he thought lost forever? Amara and Nkem stood nervously nearby, their jealousy and spite masked by feigned helpfulness. Amara, who had learned the special song Chika always sang at the river, stepped forward at the king's command. With a deep breath, she began to sing the haunting melody. The sound drifted over the water, soft and alluring. It was the same tune Chima had heard countless times before. Deep below the river's surface, Chima was exploring the coral reefs when the familiar melody reached his ears. His heart leapt with excitement. Chika, he murmured, smiling as he swam toward the surface. Chima emerged from the water, his eyes searching eagerly for Chika. But instead of her warm smile, he was met with the piercing gaze of King Ezeudo. Behind the king stood Amara, Nkem, and a line of heavily armed guards. Chima froze, confusion spreading across his face. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice steady but cautious. The king stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the young man before him. Despite the patches of dark and light skin, the resemblance was undeniable. Chima's strong features mirrored his own, and his regal presence was unmistakable. "You are my son," King Ezeudo said, his voice firm but filled with emotion. "You are the child I lost many years ago." Chima stared at him in disbelief, his mind racing. "Your son?" he repeated, shaking his head. "No, that's impossible. I don't know you." The king's expression hardened. "You were taken from me," he said. "You were born in my palace, my heir, but you were cast into this river by your mother's fear. The gods spared you and led you back to me." Chima's heart pounded. His entire life he had felt a deep restlessness, a sense of not belonging. Could this man's words be true? But another emotion quickly rose within him. Anger. "I don't belong to you," he said sharply. "This river is my home. I was raised here. You are nothing to me." King Ezeudo's jaw tightened, his patience thinning. "You are my blood," he said. "You are coming with me to reclaim your place as my son and the future king of Umuake." "I won't go with you," Chima said firmly, taking a step back toward the water. The king's eyes darkened. "Guards," he said coldly. "Capture him." The guards stepped forward, their weapons glinting in the fading sunlight. Chima's instincts kicked in and he dove back into the water, his powerful strokes carrying him away from the shore. But the guards, prepared for resistance, threw nets into the water, tangling him as he tried to escape. Chima thrashed against the nets, his movements strong and swift, but the guards outnumbered him. They dragged him back to the shore where he lay gasping for breath, his body restrained by the thick ropes. King Ezeudo knelt beside him, his expression a mix of triumph and anger. "You can fight all you want," he said, his voice low, "but you are my son. I will not leave this river without you." Chima glared at him, his chest rising and falling with heavy breaths. "You may claim me," he said bitterly, "but I do not claim you." The king's eyes flickered with a trace of sorrow, but his resolve remained unshaken. "You will understand in time," he said. "Take him to the palace." The guards lifted Chima, carrying him away as he struggled against their grip. The waters of Umudaike grew quieter, the ripples fading into stillness. The river, which had been his sanctuary for so many years, now felt like a place of betrayal. Amara and Nkem watched the scene unfold, their satisfaction mingled with unease. They had expected to hurt Chika by exposing Chima, but they hadn't anticipated the raw intensity of the king's actions. "Do you think he'll punish Chima?" Nkem whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Amara replied, her tone uncertain. "But whatever happens, Chika will have no one to sing to anymore." The two girls turned and walked back toward the village, their jealousy temporarily satisfied. Chima stood in the grand halls of the Umuake palace. The Queen Amaka waited. The queen's eyes widened when she saw Chima, her face pale with recognition. "It's him," she whispered, tears filling her eyes. "Our son." Chima stared at her, his expression cold. "You're my mother?" he asked, his voice dripping with disbelief. Queen Amaka nodded, her voice trembling. "Yes, Chima, you were born here, in this palace. You are our son, the Prince of Umuake." Chima shook his head, his anger bubbling to the surface. "If I'm your son, why did you throw me away? Why did you leave me to die?" Queen Amaka fell to her knees, her hands clasped in front of her. "I was scared," she confessed. "Your skin, it was different. I thought the king would see you as imperfect, a disgrace to his legacy. I was weak, and I made a terrible mistake." King Izudo's face hardened. "She betrayed us both," he said, his voice filled with resentment. "But the gods spared you, and now you are here to reclaim your place." Chima's laughter was bitter. "Reclaim my place? You think I'll just forget everything? The river is my home. Queen Ifunanya is my mother. I don't belong here." "You are my blood," the king said firmly. "You belong to this kingdom, whether you like it or not." "I don't care about your kingdom," Chima spat. "I don't care about you." Meanwhile, back in Umweke, Chika learned the shocking truth from a distressed villager who had witnessed Chima being taken by the king's guards. Her heart sank as she realized what had happened. "This is all because of Amara and Nkem," she murmured, her eyes narrowing with determination. "They've gone too far." Chika decided it was time to confront them once and for all. She found the two girls near the market and walked straight up to them. "You've meddled in my life for the last time," she said, her voice steady but filled with anger. "You betrayed Chima, and you've tried to ruin my happiness. Stay away from me, or I will tell the king everything." Amara and Nkem, taken aback by her boldness, tried to argue, but Chika held her ground. "You've caused enough harm," she continued. "If you try anything else, you'll regret it." The two girls exchanged uneasy glances, but didn't dare challenge her further. Chika turned and left, her focus now on finding a way to help Chima. Deep in the waters of Umudike, Queen Ifunanya sensed Chima's absence. Her connection to him, forged by years of love and care, told her that something was wrong. When she learned from her advisors that Chima had been taken by the humans, her anger burned like fire. "They think they can take him from me?" she said, her voice cold and commanding. "Prepare the army. If they want war, we will give it to them." The underwater kingdom of Manwu began to mobilize. Warriors armed with tridents and shields gathered, their resolve unwavering. Queen Ifunanya led them, her determination fueled by the love she had for Chima. The armies of Umuake and Manwu met at the banks of the river Umudike. Queen Ifunanya emerged from the water, her regal presence commanding respect and fear. "Return Chima to me," she demanded, her voice echoing over the battlefield. "He belongs to Manwu." King Izudo stepped forward, his sword gleaming in the sunlight. "He is my son, my heir," he said. "You have no claim over him." The two leaders stared each other down, their armies waiting for the command to attack. But before the first blow could be struck, Chima stepped between them, his voice ringing out. "Stop!" he shouted, his arms outstretched. "No more bloodshed!" Both sides froze, their eyes fixed on Chima. "I will not let anyone fight because of me," he said. "This war is meaningless." Queen Ifunanya's gaze softened. "Chima, they took you from us," she said. "They have no right." "And you," Chima said, turning to King Izudo, "you cannot force me to be someone I'm not. I'm not a prize to be fought over." As the battle hung on the brink, Amara and Nkem, lurking nearby, decided to sabotage Chika once more. They saw her standing at the edge of the battlefield, watching Chima with worry in her eyes. "She thinks she can get away with everything," Amara whispered. "Let's see how she fares now." The two girls pushed Chika toward the edge of the battlefield, hoping to knock her into harm's way. Chika stumbled, falling into the midst of the chaos just as the two armies began to advance. She cried out as a stray spear grazed her side, leaving her bleeding and gasping for breath. "Chika!" Chima shouted, his voice filled with panic. He rushed to her side, shielding her from the fighting as both sides hesitated, startled by the interruption. Blood seeped through Chika's dress, and her breathing grew shallow. Chima's heart ached as he held her in his arms. He looked up at the warring armies, his anger boiling over. "This is enough!" he roared. Chima turned to Queen Ifunanya and King Azudo. "If this battle continues, more innocent lives will be lost," he said. "I will not let Chika die because of your pride." He knelt beside Chika, tears streaming down his face. Placing his hand over her wound, he called upon the powers he had gained from the river. A warm golden light surrounded them, and Chika's wound began to heal. But as the light faded, Chima felt his strength leaving him. He knew what he had done. He had given up his mermaid powers to save her. Chima collapsed beside Chika, exhausted but relieved to see her breathing steadily again. Queen Ifunanya and King Azudo, moved by his sacrifice, lowered their weapons. The armies, seeing their leaders relent, also stood down. Queen Ifunanya stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "You have proven your heart, Chima," she said. "You are more than the powers you possessed. You are extraordinary." King Azudo looked at his son with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "You are my son," he said quietly. "I see that now." As peace settled over the battlefield, Amara and Nkem, realizing the gravity of their actions, slipped away unnoticed. Chika, weak but alive, smiled at Chima. "You saved me," she whispered. "I would do it again," he replied, his voice filled with love. The air around the river Umudaiki was still, the tension from the battle having dissipated. The armies of Manwu and Umuake stood silent, their weapons lowered, watching as their leaders faced one another. The fragile peace rested on the shoulders of one man, Chima. King Azudo, humbled by the events, turned to Queen Ifunanya. His stern expression softened as he spoke. "Queen Ifunanya, I acted out of pride. My arrogance and anger blinded me to what truly matters. I apologize for the pain I have caused you and your people." Queen Ifunanya's gaze, though regal and composed, held a trace of sadness. "Your actions endangered the child we both hold dear," she replied. "But I see now that your heart seeks redemption. For Chima's sake, I will forgive you." King Azudo bowed his head, a gesture of humility that surprised everyone present. It was a moment that marked the beginning of healing between the two kingdoms. The king of Umueke, who had been summoned to mediate, stepped forward. His presence commanded respect, and his voice was calm yet firm. "Today," he began, "we have seen the bravery of Chima and the consequences of pride and misunderstanding. Let us not allow these lessons to be forgotten." He looked between King Azudo and Queen Ifunanya. "The kingdoms of Umuake and Manwu shall form a lasting alliance, bound by the love and sacrifice of Chima. Let there be no more bloodshed between your people." Both rulers nodded in agreement, their hearts moved by the wisdom of the mediator. The armies disbanded and the soldiers returned to their homes, grateful that peace had been restored. Chima, who had remained quiet during the negotiations, finally spoke. His eyes burned with anger as he addressed the crowd. "There is one matter left unresolved," he said. The two girls, who had been hiding among the villagers, froze in fear. They tried to slip away unnoticed, but Chima's voice stopped them in their tracks. "Do not run," he said coldly. "You have caused enough harm." Amara and Nkem reluctantly stepped forward, their faces pale. Chika, still weak but standing beside Chima, looked at them with a mixture of pity and resolve. "They pushed Chika into harm's way during the battle," Chima said. his voice echoing with authority. "They nearly cost her her life, and their jealousy and malice have brought pain to everyone around them." The king of Umweke, furious at their wickedness, turned to the girls. "Your actions have brought shame not only to yourselves but to this village," he said sternly. "You have betrayed the trust of your people and endangered innocent lives." He raised his hand, his voice booming. "Amara and Nkem, you are hereby banished from the three kingdoms. You are declared outcasts, forbidden to marry or find refuge in any of our lands. May this punishment serve as a reminder that jealousy and hatred have no place among us." Amara and Nkem fell to their knees, begging for mercy. "Please, my king," Amara pleaded, tears streaming down her face. "We were foolish. Give us another chance." But the king's expression remained firm. "You have had chances, and you squandered them. Leave now, or face harsher punishment." The two girls were escorted out of the village, their cries fading into the distance. The people of Umweke watched in silence, their hearts heavy but understanding the justice of the king's decision. As peace settled over the kingdoms, Chima found himself at a crossroads. He had given up his mermaid powers, and his connection to the underwater world of Mmanwu was no longer the same. Yet he felt a sense of purpose he had never known before. Queen Ifunanya approached him one evening, her expression tender. "Chima," she said, "you have always been special, not because of your powers, but because of your heart. No matter where you choose to be, you will always have a place in Manu." Chima embraced her, gratitude filling his heart. "Thank you, mother," he said. "I will never forget everything you've done for me." King Ezudo also sought to mend their bond. "My son," he said, his voice steady, "I was wrong to let pride cloud my judgment. I hope that one day you can forgive me and accept your place in this kingdom." Chima nodded, though his heart was not yet ready. "I need time," he said, "but I promise to think about it." Through it all, Chika remained by Chima's side. Their bond, forged through trials and sacrifice, had only grown stronger. One evening by the river, Chima looked at her with a gentle smile. "Chika," he said, "you've always believed in me, even when I doubted myself. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I want you to be a part of it." Chika smiled back, her heart full of warmth. "I'll always be here, Chima. No matter where you go, I'll be with you." The palace of Umwake was alive with celebration. The grand hall was adorned with vibrant decorations, and the air buzzed with excitement as Chima stood before the gathered crowd. He was dressed in royal robes, his regal appearance enhanced by the calm confidence in his eyes. Today, he was to be officially crowned Prince of Umwake, a moment his parents had long awaited. Queen Amaka watched with tears of joy streaming down her face. She had lived with guilt for so long, but seeing her son now, standing tall and strong, filled her heart with peace. King Eziudo too looked on with pride. Though their relationship with Chima was still healing, this moment marked a new beginning for their family. As the chief priest placed the crown upon Chima's head, the crowd erupted in cheers. "Long live Prince Chima!" they shouted, their voices echoing through the palace. Later that evening, Chima made his way to the river Umudaike, the place that had shaped so much of his life. The moonlight danced on the water as he waited, his heart pounding with anticipation. Soon, Chika arrived, her soft smile lighting up the night. "Chima," she said warmly, "you look every bit the prince tonight." Chima chuckled, his nervousness showing in the way he shifted his weight. "I may be a prince," he said, "but none of it matters without you." Chika tilted her head, her smile fading into a look of curiosity. "What do you mean?" Chima took a deep breath, gathering his courage. "Chika," he began, "from the moment I met you, you've been my light. You've believed in me, stood by me, and shown me what true kindness is. I love you, Chika. I always have." Chika's eyes filled with tears, her heart swelling with emotion. "Chima," she said softly, "I love you too." The two shared a passionate kiss by the riverbank, their bond stronger than ever. It was a moment of pure joy, a love that had grown through trials and triumphs. Their wedding was a celebration that united the three kingdoms, The people of Umuake, Manwu, and Umueke gathered to witness the union of Chima and Chika. The ceremony was filled with music, laughter, and blessings from both the river and the land. Queen Ifunanya, who had come to the surface to bless the couple, stood proudly as Chima and Chika exchanged their vows. Though Chima no longer had his powers, his connection to the underwater kingdom remained unbroken through the love of his adoptive mother. "You will always be my son," Queen Ifunanya said, her voice filled with emotion. "And Chika, you are now part of our family too." The couple's union symbolized the lasting peace between the kingdoms, a harmony forged through love and understanding. A year later, Chima and Chika stood by the river once more, this time with a new addition to their family. Chika cradled a newborn baby in her arms, a beautiful girl with skin patterned by vitiligo, just like her father. "She's perfect," Chika whispered, her eyes filled with tears of joy. "She's a gift," Chima replied, his voice full of wonder. "Just like the gods sent me to this river, they've now sent her to us." The news of the baby's birth spread quickly, and the three kingdoms rejoiced. Unlike the judgment Chima had faced as a child, the people now saw the baby as a divine blessing, a symbol of unity and love. The child was welcomed with open arms, and her uniqueness was celebrated as a mark of the gods' favor. Chima and Chika continued to visit the river often, and their daughter grew up surrounded by the love of her family. Queen Ifunanya would meet them at the surface, her connection to Chima and his family unbroken despite the passing years. The three kingdoms thrived under the alliance forged by Chima's bravery. The story of his journey, from the river to the palace, and from exile to acceptance, became a legend that inspired generations. As the river Umudaki flowed on, it carried the memory of a young man and woman whose love and courage united three worlds. Chima, Chika, and their daughter stood as living proof of the power of forgiveness, acceptance, and the belief that even the most unique among us can be a gift to the world.